Pending. Hold on. That is fuck. Not awake. I was like, oh, I'll just put a stream starting sign on until I get the stupid fucking Facebook one going. But yeah, that's just my personal crap on there, isn't there? Hold on. And you. I need to fix you. Pending. Excuse our dust. We are setting up. How about now? Are you good? Huh? RIA podcast 6. There's no way it's only been 6. Join us as we interview American Atheists President Nick Fish. All right, good. Now go. Live. Amazing. We're good. We are so good. We are live on all platforms. As I double check each of them. Very good. Very good. I remember when I used to do this regularly. Isn't that crazy? We are live. Good morning, atheists, agnostics, people who say they're spiritual but don't go to church. Whatever you are, I don't care. Welcome to this wonderful Sunday. Wouldn't you rather be here than in a church praising an invisible man for doing so many nice things for you that happen because of chance? We have several wonderful events coming up this summer with the Rhode Island Day of Reason ceremony on May 6th at 3 p.m. Our wonderful Secretary of State, Greg Amore, helped us to make this an official day. Very grateful to him. He's also kind of a cool guy who fought back against the Trump administration's attempts to take Rhode Island voting records. Not fascist at all, by the way. How dare you call us fascist? Now, there's going to be many speakers at the event at the State House, such as Senator Bridget Valverde, State Rep Jennifer Stewart, Stephen Brown of the ACLU, the President of the National Center for Science Education, Ken Miller, and Rabbi Goldwasser of the Rhode Island Board of Rabbis. Nice of him to stop by and support us, even though, you know, he's not necessarily an atheist himself. We also have, for people who want to join Rhode Island Atheists, a spring party on May 16th at 6 p.m. at JW's Pub. Now, we also usually have meetings at libraries. Why not go to a library instead of going to a cold building where you burn incense and speak some Latin? We will have meetings in June going forward. Our usual monthly meetings where we go to the libraries, we discuss certain topics. I remember the first one I ever went to, memorable for me, was Salem witch trials. We'll have speakers like that. That's the kind of thing that we talk about when we're there. You could say the history of atheism. Now, we have, obviously, it would help if you could actually see me, wouldn't it? I don't usually put that thing on because it also blinds me. Very concerning. We're looking into this. We are going to be interviewing today the president of American Atheists, Nick Fish. And we're very happy to have him. He'll be coming in about 9 minutes. I should probably make sure that he is aware of how he is going to join us. So let me just send him that quick message. Anyone in chat with us today? Hello. It's going to be, we're going to breeze through this show. It's gonna be short and sweet-ish. The interview is obviously gonna be the longest part. I mean, he's the president of American Atheists. We have to give him, we have to really dive deep into everything, get his perspective on things. It's very interesting. The waiting room BC. Also, if you wish to discuss anything on this podcast, hey, I'm all for adversarial too. You can, after the interview, jump into the waiting room. You'll be granted permissions, and it will bring you on to discuss whatever it is you want. Whether it's to ask us questions about the organization, whether it is to challenge us on our philosophical ideas in the marketplace of ideas, or anything like that. You're welcome to do it. Now, recently, there's been a lot of issues between the Trump admin and the non-religious. They've been targeting us. They've been calling us un-American. They've been passing statements and other things saying not very nice things about us. So it's more important than ever for us to stand up for our rights to not believe in the God, for our rights to be treated as equals, for our rights to not have the government treat other religious entities with favoritism. So do what you can. If you can come to our events, if you can support us, if you can help us with the volunteer work we do with partner organizations like the Women Project, etc., please help us. We would really appreciate it if you joined us in the fight. Lovely members, Brian Cardoza and John Murtis, recently went on the... Why am I blanking right now? Recently went on a very popular progressive podcast to talk about things like how... What's it? I'm forgetting two names now. What's that guy, that Republican representative I don't like, he's a real piece of work. Sorry, the beginning of the show is a little unscripted, as you might be able to tell. What am I thinking about? Progressive. His name's so the progressive podcaster. His name starts with a B. Why am I losing my mind right now? Trying to remember. Anyway, we discussed things like that conservative representative who, at first when we were doing our Day of Reason, he was attacking us, calling us names, calling us anti-American, and yet he defended Trump. There's this conservative that defended Trump when he said that the U.S. senators and representatives should be executed by the state for putting out a video saying you shouldn't follow illegal orders. They talked about that guy for a while. They talked about the work that we do to get our voices out there, to do our activism. Last podcast, last month, you'll remember we did a lovely interview with Brian Cardoza. And it was very nice. He talked to us about his background and how he became an atheist and things like that. Oh, and our lovely friend Nick Fish doesn't have the link, I guess. So we are going to make sure we send that. We're going to get that interview going as soon as we can. Honestly, in the future, I just might start with like 5 minutes of talking and then go right into the interview. I'm gonna plan that for the future. I'm on the wrong screen here. Here we go. How is everyone doing this fine day? You could say we're blessed by spring. Yes, I would like to. I would like Google to sign in Gmail to get it, please, today, please. Um, Wait, fuck it. I'll just fish. Oh, I sent it from. Yeah, I sent it from this email actually. That's where we were talking. Oh, he wants the link to join. Okay, I got you. I got you. Name of Roland podcaster whose name starts with B. Political. Bill Bartholomew. I knew it was BB. I was driving myself insane. That's not shade. I just haven't woke up yet. I'm not. I'm like, oh, who's that? No, he's very popular. He's very well known. Bill Bartholomew is the progressive podcaster that I was referring to. Brian Cardoza and John Maris did a very nice show with them on that. And Chippendale, Mike Chippendale is the conservative who was talking shit about us being un-American, and yet supported Trump's statements, basically saying that the senators and representatives who said you shouldn't follow illegal orders should be executed. Yeah, that guy sucks. And he's blocked me because he's supposed. That guy got into an argument with, I think, Ryan Fleming, and Ryan was talking about the incident, explaining to him why it was so bad that Trump said that. And then he got it in his head that Mike Chippendale got it in his head that they were all representatives and none of them were senators. And Ryan referred to them as senators. And then Mike tried to do this like pedantic gotcha. Oh, they're actually representatives, not senators. You don't even know what you're talking about. I get to dismiss your whole opinion. And then I pointed out, actually, there was a senator in there, so you're the one who doesn't know anything. And then he blocked me. What a pussy. Anyway. Hello, Nick.
Hey there.
How are you doing today?
I am all right. How's your day?
Good, thank you. Um, Lovely spring day. Glad we could get you in here. I appreciate your time. You are
Yeah, no problem.
as the president of American Atheists. It's very nice that we get to have a conversation with you. Now, also, if you want to share your video, you can, but you don't have to. If you have like a phone camera or whatever, you could display it. I can't do it on my end just because I can't both stream my camera to OBS and also to Discord, but that's not necessarily important. Anyway, as the president of American Atheists, what was it like becoming the president and of the organization, and what inspired you to take that role?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on this issue for basically my entire career. I think I got started. The thing that really got me into advocacy in the first place was, coming to terms with the fact that the religious right, what we would now probably call the Christian nationalist movement, had a ton of power the first time I was able to vote in an election,
Yeah,
in 2004, recognizing at the time, the Bush administration's sort of intentional use of religion as a way to drive a wedge between people, to put people's civil rights on the ballot, and looking around and noticing that the issues that I cared most about, whether it was public education, whether it was LGBTQ rights, whether it was abortion access, the environment, I mean, just the list sort of goes on and on. The through line through a lot of those bad policies was people allowing their faith to be the sole justification for the reason they wanted to do anything. And so
right.
I kind of got into, secular advocacy for that reason, out of a general concern for all these things that I cared about. And, just over time, uh, really found that there was a lot of good work that could be done here, on primarily the policy side. I mean, that was kind of how I got my entry into things. But then from there, you start recognizing that it's not just the law that's a problem, the laws that need to change, or policies that have to be passed. It's also attitudes, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of work that has to happen that isn't just oh, we can pass a law and now it's fixed.
Right.
We hear from people all the time about the challenges that they face, in interacting with their families, in the workplace, things that federal civil rights law or even state civil rights law can't like reach into and fix. Those interpersonal attitudes, the breaking down of the stigma, the reducing the barriers that people still face in their day-to-day lives. There's a lot of work that remains to be done on that front, and being a part of setting a positive vision for what it means to be an atheist in America, setting a positive vision for what it looks like to live in a pluralistic community where
Right.
everybody's dignity is respected. I mean, that is the sort of thing that those of us that work on this, that do this work, that work in this area, I think that's one of the things that really keeps us going in the morning, gets us up,
Yeah.
is fighting for that. Not just, oh, can we pass a law, but what are some things we can do to make things just a bit easier for the next group of people that have to kind of walk down this path.
Yeah, I like that the interpersonal attitudes angle as well. I have a very interesting relationship with my family's religion and all of that, where I've been openly an atheist since I was 12, but apparently even recently, I get weird comments where, for example, there was one Easter where I was gonna go to some, I don't know if it was an American Atheist conference or something like that. I forget what specifically it was, because I didn't end up going. But I told my family that I might miss Easter, and they're like, "Oh, why?" And I was like, "Because I might go to this." And I thought they were be over it by now, to be honest with you. But apparently, this was this huge like insult. Oh, you're gonna go to one of those things on Easter? Our family is Catholic. I'm not. I'm not. I haven't been that for a while, right? It was very interesting, the comments I got. But
yeah, and sort of the expectation that just because you're raised in something, you're expected to continue with it for the rest of time.
yeah,
I think people fail to understand that a key part of freedom of thought, of freedom of belief, freedom of religion, is the notion that you can change it. I mean, it's
right.
literally a key part of how we define a core human right, is not just having the ability to believe something, but having the ability to change your mind. And I think that's a big thing about being an atheist, is recognizing that just because we believe something today doesn't mean we're going to always believe that forever when we get new evidence, right? And that's a key part
Exactly.
of having that openness that I think comes with being an atheist. And this perception people have of atheists is like arrogant.
Yeah.
We think we have all the answers.
The
I
fedora.
often come
Yeah.
back with actually just the opposite.
Yeah.
We very much recognize that we don't have all the answers, and
Exactly.
that's a key. That is like the defining feature of being an atheist beyond I don't believe in God, is recognizing the limits of my own knowledge, recognizing the limits of what we know, and having a system to try to figure out better answers to things, figure out what the facts are. I mean, that's something we all should strive for. And I worry often about, the way that especially, evangelicals or, really fundamentalist religions, there is no sort of quest for more knowledge there. It's well,
Exactly.
all the answers are in this book, I
There's
don't
a
need
quest for
anything else.
conformity. That's what they value.
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like they think that they own you in a way. If if they're all one religion and then you divert from that, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to question it for whatever reason. I guess because it makes things more comfortable if everyone
Makes
agrees
them
the
look
same
bad.
thing. Well, yeah, that there's that, and there's also like they expect. It's like you can't disagree with them about that and
Right.
still be chill. I don't know. It's very weird for me.
Yeah, it's a lack of commitment to pluralism, to
Yeah.
that kind of live and let live vision. I mean, people fail to understand, and I think this is one of the reasons that a lot of people are really hostile, especially, again, white evangelicals, the Christian nationalist movement. They're really hostile to atheists because they don't understand that we like genuinely believe that they have a right to believe whatever kind of silly thing that they want to believe,
Yeah.
as long as they leave us alone. Because they're a core part of their ideology is that use of force to conform, to make people conform to something. They can't come to grips with the idea that we're not trying to do the same thing,
Yeah.
that we wouldn't be, we're not like actively trying to extinguish their religion from the earth or something, or that we would crush dissent under our heels, because that's not who we are, right? It's very different from their worldview, and they genuinely don't understand it. They
Right.
genuinely don't.
So Talk to me a little bit, as the president of American Atheists, about what you do to support local affiliates of
Yeah.
American Atheists. How many are there, and like how do they vary between the organizations on like their content, their makeup, what they do?
Yeah. Yeah. So American Atheist has more than 200 affiliates all across the country. And I think the thing that is really special about that number and about the way that those groups are organized is they're as diverse as the people they represent. We always say that there's no how-to manual to be an atheist. A
Right.
lot of atheists share common beliefs, share common values, but there's a lot of individuality in there, and there's a lot of difference between the atheist experience and what it's like to be an atheist in a place like, say, I live in Philadelphia. What it's like to be an atheist in Philadelphia versus what it's like to be an atheist in a place like Montgomery, Alabama, and then what it's like to be an atheist in rural Arkansas or in rural Wyoming, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between those experiences. And so our affiliates, what we encourage them to do is let us know what resources they need to best serve the needs of the people that are their members. It's not for us to say you need to be doing X, Y, and Z every single week. This is exactly the programming we want you to do this week. Here's exactly how you do it correctly. There isn't a one size fits all, and we try not to be top down, telling people exactly how to organize their groups. What we try to do is give people some best practices. Say, here are things that have worked for other organizations, other groups that are kind of similarly situated to you. Here's some programming that works for people that are coming to us with the same expressed needs. Here are some ways to make your events and your group and your meetings and everything that you do a little bit more inclusive for folks.
Right.
Here's some ideas for programming that you may not have considered that folks have found a lot of good luck with, or that have really grown the community in a way that reflects the full diversity of the people that are living in their area. And so we organize that around what we call our ACEs, ACES, activism, community, education, and service.
Right.
And so what we found is that groups that do a little bit of all of those things, you don't have to, it's not a quota system. You don't have to do, exactly 25% of each. But these are things that people, by and large, it scratches an itch that people have within a community, any type of community, whether it's an atheist community or your local knitting circle or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Those are like core human things that people like to do together. They want to have fun. They want to change the world around them. They want to feel safe and supported and included as part of a vibrant community. They want to better themselves, and they want to have a place to lean on if something goes really, really wrong in their life. And so all that programming is aimed at those things, at improving the world around us, improving ourselves internally, improving the community that we're a part of, and just like building something better. And so that type of work that we do focuses around supporting groups doing each of those kind of four pillars of work. And I think that's a key part of it, is being a supporting role. Our role is not to be directive, it's to be supporting. So whether that's leadership training, whether that's providing legal support when something goes awry in the community, which it often does,
Yeah.
where a local government is trying to discriminate, whether it's coordinating things like lobbying, helping folks engage more fully with their elected officials at the state level.
Right.
Those are all things that American Atheists can help with, and providing connection to other national groups, whether that's within the secular space or whether that's other civil rights organizations. I think that's our role is to fill the gaps that are really difficult for a volunteer-led, volunteer-run organization, where the leaders of these groups are often working 1-2 jobs, putting in
Yeah.
40-60 hours a week. Our parents have a family, have kids that they're also taking care of and looking after, and then in their spare time, quote unquote, are doing all this extra work to make sure that they have a place to go, and recognizing, for example, that the church has a couple 100-year head start
Yeah.
on
Unfortunately.
building groups and the infrastructure, and we don't lose out, or we don't leave behind the need for many of those community support structures when we leave churches, or if we're not raised in a church in the first place. We still need many of those things, and
Right.
we can't just duplicate them whole cloth, because in many instances, some of the ways that churches organize and assemble those groups really butts up against our core values. It's not how we
Right.
would do it if we were starting from scratch. And and even if we were starting from scratch and we could replicate it from the whole hog, we wouldn't because
Well,
they're not in
can you
alignment with
elaborate
our
more on
values.
that? What you mean by
Sure.
things
Yeah.
that they do
Kind
that?
of like the top-down approach to things, right?
Right.
If you don't do exactly what we say and order your meetings in this way, and you don't have the kind of indoctrinating style like youth education programming, we're going
Right.
to kick you out, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. Or to really put it into concrete terms that I think a lot of people would resonate with a lot of people right now. If you don't give us 5-10% of your income,
Oh,
we
jeez.
I don't know if you I noticed, but there's no tithing around here, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't
Exactly.
want there to be. What we say is, hey, if you like the work we're doing, we'd love for you to support the organization, become a member, with $5 a month or something. But we certainly don't say 5% of your income,
Exactly.
and we wouldn't, right? Like that would be absurd. And also, would just be completely out of alignment with our values. And so, it's a great system if you can get in on it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
really makes it easy to do fundraising if you can just threaten everybody with eternal damnation.
The Lord says you must give us your money. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you talked about suggesting programs that have been very successful for other affiliates. What sort of programs like that? Can you be more specific about the programs that you think of that you've suggested to affiliates that have been really successful?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are some groups out there that are just doing a ton of really great work, growing the number of people that are coming to their meetings, growing their community to really reflect the diversity of the folks that they represent. And so, let me give you a couple of really specific ones. This is an anecdote that people often think, like when I tell it, people think I'm joking, or that
Oh,
I am embellishing it for for storytelling purposes, but I promise I'm not. This is almost a verbatim conversation I had with someone, and they said, we've tried everything. We've done everything we can think of to bring in more young people, to bring in a more diverse audience, but it's the same like 20 people coming to every meeting.
right.
What do we do to bring in young people? We've tried everything. We tried reading a book. We tried reading having our book club do books that were targeted at young people. We've tried bringing in young authors for our book clubs. And I said, well, have you tried doing something that isn't just reading a book or having a book club meeting or talking about a book at your meetings? And they said, oh, well, no, like that's what we do at our meetings.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, have you considered maybe doing like a service project where, you go out and you maybe clean a park, or have you considered going and having kind of a hiking get together where you just go to the park and you're just getting together, you're having coffee and you do a lap around the park and everybody chit chats and then you maybe have a breakfast and people bring, some little muffins or something. Like, have you tried that? Have you had, do you have childcare at your meetings?
Right.
Do you, uh, do you do extra things beyond just having a book club? And it was like it was almost like I had said something that they had just literally never considered because they were
Right.
stuck in a mindset of, well, what our group is it gets together once a month to discuss a book.
Exactly.
And if that's all you want, I mean that's fine. Like there are book clubs that exist. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. If that's what you want, okay. But if you want to grow the group, if you want more people coming into the group, you can't just think and operate within the same really confined structure of what your group is. You need to think outside that box. And yeah, you should certainly not just read books by Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris or like whatever. You should
Exactly.
bring in new authors and look and make sure that you're not reinforcing stereotypes and that you're not going to the same sort of tired things and just rereading the same books and the same authors, but pushing the boundaries of that, but also push the boundaries of the structure, right? Another great example is, so, we have a really hard time attracting young families to our meetings.
Right.
We do our meetings at different times of the week. We do different programming, and I said, okay, well, where do you meet? And they said, well, we meet at such and such bar and restaurant. I said, well, maybe some people don't want to come to that because they don't want to bring their 7-year-old kid to a bar.
Exactly.
And they were like, oh, that's a good point. And this isn't, by the way, I don't want to pretend that this is a problem that's unique to atheist and humanist groups.
Of course.
I attended a interfaith, multi-faith event for LGBTQ leaders, and we were talking about the group was hosting an event for Trans Day of Remembrance, and they said, it's really interesting. We have this really great event and it goes really well, but we want it to be interfaith and multi-faith. We have a really hard time getting some people to come, and they want to come, or they said they want these events, and then just people don't show up. And I said, where do you host it? Where is this event hosted? And they said, well, we very generously, a local affirming church said that they would host the event, and
Huh.
it's in
Nice.
their space. And I said, well, that's great. I'm so glad. One thing you may want to consider is that for trans people in particular, the
They might
stats are
not
that
want
about
to.
half of trans people are not just non-religious; they're atheists.
Yeah.
Even more are non-religious, and you're dealing with, and you have to grapple with the fact that a lot of LGBTQ people have just a ton of spiritual trauma where they were members of a religious community that explicitly said, you are not welcome here because of who you are, because of who you love. You are
Right.
broken. They use just the most dehumanizing, horrible language targeting LGBTQ people. And so those folks turn around and they say, I don't want to go to a church. I don't care how affirming it is.
Exactly.
It's a place of trauma. And I understand. And I as an organizer, as somebody who's, done this at the local level for a long time, I really understand the appeal of space that's offered for free. Like, that's great. It's one of the biggest expenses you have, right? And
Exactly.
but at the same time, is there a place that's maybe it's $100 and it's a local community center, or you can maybe have the conversation with a local community center, like, hey, we want to do this event. We think it's in alignment with your values. Can we would you be willing to host us for free or donate the space for this one event? And a lot
Right.
of them will say yes. And so it's not just the programming that you put on, sort of narrowly defined. It's not just the broader how do you conceive of your group. It's also, where are you meeting? It's what times of the day are you meeting? It's what days of the week are you meeting? It's the services that you provide at those meetings. Do you have food? Do you have childcare? Do you have a place for young people to go? Do you have sort of parallel programming for teenagers, for tweens, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to bring in families with children, you want to bring in a diverse cross section of the community that you represent, you have to think about all of those things. And again, I don't want to pretend it's easy, but that's what we exist for, is to provide some of that kind of guidance, that learned experience over the course of, hundreds of groups that we've worked with across decades of time. We can collectively say, okay, you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. Here are some things that have worked. Here's a way to, for a very low cost, low investment of time and money, to make the group more accessible, to bring in more people, so more people can have the experience of being a member and being a part of one of our communities. Because, and this is the key, we don't just do this because it's like good vibes to have a great community. It also really makes a difference in people's lives. We did a survey now about 8 years ago where it was called the U.S. Secular Survey. We surveyed about 35,000 people, and what we found is that belonging to a local atheist secular community, belonging to any community, profoundly reduced the incidence of loneliness, of the screens for depression that people experienced when they were stigmatized, when they were ostracized by their family, or when they were confronted with anti-atheist discrimination in the workplace or in education. Belonging to a community had just profoundly positive effects on people's lives. And so
Yeah.
the more we can make that belonging, that sense of belonging, the reality of that happen, the better off people are. And so that's why we really focus in on what can we do for our affiliate level organizations, and what can we do for our members at the grassroots.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for all of that. Now,
Mhm.
what more do you think that local affiliates could do to have impacts on their local communities and to advocate for separation of church and state at the state level, as small organizations with limited resources?
Yeah. I think so a couple things that I'll say about that. I think a lot of atheists often say, well, I don't understand a group. I don't understand, like, what do you guys do, right? Do you
Yeah.
just sit around agreeing with each other that God doesn't exist? That sounds pretty boring to me. And I would agree, that does sound pretty boring. And so the answer is, no, we don't do that. People don't join these things for the abstraction. Usually they join them because there are potlucks, because there are things that they can do
Right.
that make their life a little bit better. And so whatever we can do to reduce barriers for people joining, that's great. And so what can groups do to be more effective at changing the world around them? Number one is make their groups welcoming, bring in more people, make sure that you are being welcoming to newcomers. It's a place where I think historically atheists and atheist communities have not done the greatest job, because they're often like over intellectualizing everything. It is a book club, or we're having yet another discussion about epistemology, and like, again, I don't want to say that those things are not valuable. I think that's if that's part of your programming,
Exactly.
fine. But somebody who's walking in off the street, who's never been to an organization, a meeting of your organization, of your local group, should be able to walk in and feel supported, included, and welcome right from the get-go. And one great way of doing that is if there's things like food,
Yeah.
if it's a game night, if it's, we're planning the hiking club is going out on Thursday, if they see that there's a bunch of programming happening almost every day, and some of our most effective member organizations and our most effective affiliates, what they've done is they've made it so that you don't just have one person planning every single event and all they do is one event a month or one event a week. Instead, they have this diffuse model where they recognize that not every event is going to be for every person.
Right.
That not every single thing that the group does has to be for every single member of the group. And so, like, that's the way that you build a big community that recognizes that, hey, we don't agree on, or we don't have to get down with the same 80 or the same 100% of the things. We can agree on and enjoy spending time with one another, doing things that we individually enjoy, or we enjoy doing with this person over here. Or we have a game night and we have a hiking club and we do all these things. That's the key to building long-term power and having a bigger impact, is recognizing that, we come together on the things that we agree on, and we kind of go off in our, it's slightly separate, but still part of the same community spaces to do the things that we also enjoy there. And that's okay. But as far as, like, if you're wanting to make a policy difference, if you're wanting to just be more involved, and change the narrative, do change the law, right? A big part of that is, frankly, just showing up.
Right.
It's a almost like fake it till you make it kind of situation.
Exactly.
Where, these groups, the religious right, the Christian nationalist movement, set aside some very profound differences on theology because they recognized that they could make a big difference on some really horrible things, right? Like
Right.
some
Working
things that we
together.
really
Yeah.
don't like.
Exactly.
And they said, we're going to set aside these, like these holy wars, because we think it's far more important to preserve, like, segregation and to really screw over people that need abortion care, or be maximally terrible to LGBT people, right? Like,
Right.
they they set aside
Maximally
all
terrible.
these big ones. Yeah, I mean, seriously. And so, that's how they did it. And imagine what we can do when we actually have a positive vision for the world.
Yeah.
We say, like, we can have a debate, or we can have a discussion about all these other things, or philosophy or whatever. What we're going to do right now is go clean up a park, and then we'll talk about that stuff later. And what we're going to do today is we're all going to go to a school board meeting, and we're going to get up and talk about how it's important that our kids have access to books that challenge them, and that are, maybe ones that they haven't seen before, and that some weirdo busybody Christian nationalist in the community doesn't have a veto over whether or not my kids can read a book that highlights the experience of Black Americans living in the South, right?
Right.
Like, that's something that you can do tomorrow that makes a huge difference, because you look at some of the figures on this, those book bans, that were all in vogue the last few years because of groups like Moms for Liberty. News outlets, I think the Washington Post, I think it was, did an analysis, and they found that, like, 70%, I mean, there's this huge number of the book bans, like, nationwide, were from, like, 20 people.
It's insane.
Which is, like, they're just sitting around writing letters, like, griping to people. And because the squeaky wheel gets the grease, people don't want conflict. A lot of these, school board members are themselves overworked, and they do it as a volunteer, and they do it because they care about kids. And so they're just like, I don't want to deal with this. All right, fine. I'm going to take this book out. Right. Like,
Yeah.
and so showing up and just being like, hey, no, we support you. I support the library, even if it's something I might disagree. Like, I don't want vetoes happening by some weirdo in the community to be taking
Exactly.
books out of schools. I trust librarians to make a smart decision about what's appropriate, because we're not experts. Librarians, teachers are experts. Great. Like, teach your class. We're not going to meddle with things. That's really powerful. Going and meeting with your state officials, really powerful, to build that relationship, that long-term relationship, so that they know, oh yeah. I know Bill over here from the local group. He shows up every single time and is supportive, and also has a group of another 20 people that engage in letter writing and send postcards and make a phone call, or just show up and be supportive. I mean, that's a big one. And
Yeah.
that applies not just to elected officials, but to other organizations, other social movements, other civic groups, League of Women Voter type organizations, the NAACP, LGBT community groups. Like, you can show up and just be supportive. It doesn't require you to, go out and door knock or send, make a bunch of phone calls or have uncomfortable meetings. Sometimes it's just the simple act of showing up that makes a huge difference in whether something happens or not. And it's a bar to clear for sure, because you have to make the time to do it. And I don't want to say that that's not a big deal, but it's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people can do, that shows that we're willing to show up, which is 80% of the battle, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Now, obviously, you're the president now of American Atheists. How has the organization's strategy evolved under your leadership?
Yeah, so this was something that I wanted to be really intentional of. The organization has been around since 1963, in a variety of forms. Kind of got started by Madalyn Murray O'Hair out of that Supreme Court case that took mandatory Bible readings and prayer out of schools.
Right.
I think one of the things that was key to me is a recognition that we have to evolve. We have to evolve with the times. Used to be, and this is, even early in my time with American Atheists, nobody would write about us, right? Like, people just sort of refused to cover the fact that atheists existed. And there's been this tremendous growth of atheists and non-religious people over the course of the last couple of decades, in part because the Christian nationalist movement is so terrible that it's pushing away a ton of people.
Yeah.
But the organization has to evolve with the times. So we wanted to mature the organization, be less reactive, build more infrastructure, focus more on better understanding our community. We're a community that says we care a lot about the data and responding to that, but we didn't have good data. So one of the first things I did was launch this survey project that we did that I mentioned, and then dig in on the different experiences that different sub-communities within our community had with what it was like to be an atheist. So we did sub-community briefs on LGBT people, on young people, on women, on Black atheists, to kind of understand, what are the differences here? What are some ways that the atheist experience differs across these lines, and how are they similar? The second big focus change for us was moving far more into state level policy work. We recognize that not a lot happens in Congress. The religious right has been organized at the grassroots state level for decades. We're in many ways working from behind on that.
Yeah.
But it's a place where we can still have a tremendous impact, and we have been really impactful. We've gotten a lot of good laws passed, stopped a lot of really bad ones from going into effect, because we've invested in the state level work, and because we've invested in coalition work. This is stuff that people don't necessarily see on the day-to-day. We don't put out a press release talking about, how we met with a potential partner, but it's the sort of thing that takes a long time to do and develop those relationships, so people realize and come to the realization and the understanding that you can be counted on as a valuable, trusted partner in work, that you're going to show up and work collaboratively to get stuff done. And so that's, not just within the atheist community. We've our relationships with groups like, the American Humanist Association and Freedom from Religion Foundation have never been stronger.
Yeah.
But that's also interfaith partners, whether it's groups that are representing and helping protect the rights of minority religious communities, whether that's groups that are standing up against the threat of white Christian nationalism from within the Christian community, whether that's repro groups, so Planned Parenthood or Pro-Choice America, whether it's LGBT groups, voting rights, public education. I mean, there are all these issues that people in our community really care about, and we want to be able to plug them in and have them get connected to the groups that have expertise and really can make a big difference on that one issue. We really want to be a clearinghouse for getting our community more involved, because, number one, it breaks down the barriers and the stigma and promotes the understanding of the fact that atheists are, hyper engaged. We really, really care about making the world a better place, but we've got to know where to go, right? A lot of folks tell us that their biggest struggle is they don't know how to make an impact. They don't know how to make a difference. They don't know where to go first. And so if we can ease that transition to help them like get in and get involved, that's great. But we want to make it so that folks are we're elevating the stories of people within the community. It's not just about me. My experience as an atheist is different from a lot of people. It's very similar to, I think, a lot of people in my generation. I'm a millennial. I kind of grew up in the rural Midwest. There's a lot of people just like me that were not raised in a particularly religious household, that didn't have sort of a traumatic experience leaving religion. I was never particularly religious. My parents aren't particularly religious. I can count on one hand the number of times I've been to church, like to go to church. And I think American Atheist has to speak to, and people have to see themselves represented within the organization. So they need to see that experience is represented. They need to see that the experience of people leaving like high control, hyper conservative religions, that's represented.
Yeah.
They need to see that folks who are, Jewish, who don't believe in any of the religious stuff, but are still identify as Jewish because of the cultural connection, or whatever the case may be, that they have a place in our community.
Yeah.
And so like that was a big kind of culture change within the organization that I really wanted to make sure was front and center, of like elevating all of those different stories, not just me as the president, but who is the best person to speak on a particular topic. The answer is not always the president. Sometimes it's me elevating the stories and perspectives of other folks.
Nice. Thank you for all of that. Now, as you probably know, the Department of Justice recently created a task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, and they're effectively targeting the nearly 30% of Americans who identify as non-religious.
Yeah.
How do you respond to the framing that they use, that protecting atheists is somehow anti-Christian?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scare quotes and sort of the quote unquote anti-Christian bias, to quote unquote protect Christians' rights. And all of these things.
Right. Because the rights are so under threat right now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's so difficult to be a Christian in America today.
Yeah.
So a couple things here. The premise is the answer, right? The task force was supposedly created for protecting religious freedom, but it erases the freedoms of, as you said, 30% of Americans. That's not religious freedom. That's about Christian privilege. And we got to be just like crystal clear about the people who are behind this are the same people who were behind, Project 2025, the same people who were behind the Christian nationalist movement writ large. And you can trace a through line from today, back 20 years ago, to back 40 years ago, to the moral majority, back to segregation academies. And I joke with people that I feel like that, that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme where I'm standing in front of, a pin board with photos pinned to it in red string, being like, look at how it's all connected. But in this case, it actually is. I think there's a recognition that from the majority of Americans, certainly from atheists, certainly from religious minorities in America, and I think, again, from an overwhelming majority of Americans, I think it's crucial to point out that the agenda of this task force of the Project 2025 backers of the Christian nationalist movement, their agenda is profoundly unpopular. People, when they hear about it, they're just like, well, this sucks.
Exactly.
And so like any of these projects that pretend that Christians are under siege in America is just completely made up. It's not about religious freedom. It's about religious privilege. The First Amendment protects our right to not have a religion just as much as it protects everybody else's right to have a religion. Anyone who tells you any the other ways is lying to you, trying to scam you, or is grossly misinformed. The anti-Christian framing of so much of their narrative here is entirely a rhetorical move. They are hell-bent on claiming that the protecting of people's civil rights is somehow a threat to Christianity.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that, and I think what a lot of my Christian friends who work in this space would say as well, is if your Christian identity, if your Christianity is threatened by ensuring that a gay person can get served at a restaurant, or if your Christian faith is threatened by me getting married to my partner, your Christianity really is pretty weak.
Exactly.
And kind of sucks. And like, sorry about that, but we live in a society. It was Antonin Scalia. I'm not one to like randomly approvingly quote Antonin Scalia all the time, but in his Employment Division versus Smith case, which is a foundation of American law as it relates to religious freedom and generally applicable laws, he said if we make if we allow people to be excused from obeying the law because of their religious beliefs, then every man becomes a law unto himself.
Exactly.
And what we like, you don't exempt people from the speed limit because they have a sincerely held religious belief that they should be able to go 10 miles an hour faster.
That God wants them to go as fast as possible.
Got to get to church right now, like right?
Yeah.
Like that's not how we do it.
Yep.
Any more than we allow people to discriminate in public services, whether it's at a restaurant or a hotel or anything, or in employment, because they believe that, you know, the races should be kept separate, or that a woman's place is in the home, or that someone dressing in quote unquote the wrong clothes is an abomination.
Right.
We don't create those exemptions for things like this. Is a settled argument from, you know, the civil rights era from 60 years ago.
Yeah.
We settled this argument as to whether or not you could exclude people on the basis of race because of your religion, and the answer was no. And we shouldn't be allowing people to exclude others based on other protected characteristics, including LGBTQ status, including other religions, across a wide range of things, simply because of religious belief. And that's more or less what the game is here. That's what they're trying to do, is to redefine pluralism and acknowledgement of, like, when you choose to enter the public space, you have to serve everybody. They want to define that as anti-Christian because they want to create almost like a parallel structure where Christians are privileged above everyone else.
Right.
And by the way, it's not just Christians, it's a particular type of Christians. You notice that the sorts of things that they quote unquote protect are the things that only reactionary, hyper-conservative evangelicals care about.
Right. Which is what they care about at the end of the day. Yeah.
Right. And so that kind of gives away the game as well. That those are the things that they're going out of their way to protect: the anti-LGBT, anti-abortion, anti-woman, racist stuff. That's what they're trying to do. This report, the people that it cites are like, the Heritage Foundation, First Liberty, Alliance Defending Freedom. Gee, I wonder why they seem to think Christians are under attack. Well, it's because they have spent their entire organization's history, doing their best to raise tens of millions of dollars from people that feel their privilege slipping away. And that's a really important narrative for them. And just sort of follow the special interest money for some of this. These are groups that are just printing money, lying to people about the threats to their rights. And, it wasn't that long ago that we were told that extending and making sure, LGBT people could get married was going to destroy society. I mean, I'm looking around.
Oh, look, it's still here. Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I'm looking around. I don't see any threat to the straight marriages just because I can get married now. Right?
Exactly.
So, I think we can sort of discount their hair on fire, the sky is falling narrative on a host of issues because they tend to be wrong on everything else too.
Yeah, I don't know where the quote's from, but for the people who have lived their whole lives basically on top with all the privilege and power, the loss of absolute power is always perceived to be persecution. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, you've criticized the Trump regime's Project 2025 agenda for consolidating power for themselves. What dangerous pieces of Project 2025 do you think don't get talked about enough?
Yeah, it's a couple on that. I think one that it feels very wonky, and people are just like, oh my God, their eyes glaze over because it as soon as you start, as soon as you say the words involved, they're just like, oh, this sounds like I'm getting my taxes done or something. A big one is the civil service. We have, a lot of government employees. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes from committed civil servants that, do their best. And by the way, they do it very efficiently, and they do it for less pay than they would make in the private sector. The government is quite efficient, actually, at doing a lot of things. So a big one it's called the Schedule F reclassification, where they're essentially reclassing all these people that are civil servants as political appointees, making it easier to fire people who are nonpartisan, people that care just about government working well, and replacing them with regime loyalists. And then you have people, instead of, committed to doing the best they can to helping out every American, instead what you have are people who embed themselves in the system that are committed to tearing it down from the inside. And I think that's a key thing, a through line that runs through Project 2025 and through the Doge stuff that Elon Musk was doing. It's not about efficiency. Like they've done a hell of a job, like branding this as, oh, it's about efficiency. No,
despite all the money they spent not finding any waste. Yeah.
It's not about efficiency. It's about making government not work. It's about breaking things. and not replacing it with anything. And if your entire ideology is based on this notion that government can't possibly work, that we as a collective society can't choose to invest in things, and if you want help, you have to turn to a religion, you have to turn to church. I mean, that's an embedded assumption that's part of all of this. Is they don't want the government doing this stuff, because then you have to go to church. Then you have to be a member of these religious organizations. You have to conform if you want disaster aid, if you want childcare, if you need food because you can't put food on your table, if you need shelter because you're homeless. They want to make it so you have to turn to them, and that they're free to discriminate against you, because that's core, right? That keeps you in the pews, or it keeps you attending, and it keeps their control over you. And so that's a big one. Another one is that just religious exemptions, carving out of religious privileges for Christians, is literally baked into every single thing that this administration is doing. That's part of the Project 2025 playbook, whether it's Department of Health and Human Services, whether it's employment discrimination, whether it's public education, whether it's scientific funding. They're making it impossible to do any of those things unless you have these massive religious carve-outs that fundamentally undermine everything about protecting people's rights. That if you have carve-out upon carve-out upon carve-out, it's just like the foundation of a house. If you start carving out at the foundation of that, the house collapses.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it. I think that's you don't have to look very far to find those. And I know it's something people talk about a lot. I don't think they're recognizing just how profound and systemic those exemptions are. And the last thing I'll just mention is the personnel side of it, right?
Yeah.
Project 2025 wasn't just like a policy wish list. It had a list of like, here are the people to bring in. And so they all kind of like, it's a three-legged stool, where if you gut civil service protections, if you create religious exemptions, and you bring in the people to implement them, that makes it so that Christians, reactionary Christians, are sort of forever insulated from having to provide equitable service to everybody, from true accountability for discrimination. That's the fact of it. And we talked about Project 2025 before it was cool. And it's one of those where we hate to say I told you so, but at the same time, we told you so.
Exactly.
That this was going to happen, and boy has it. So
how do you make the case for atheist civil rights to audiences or to Americans who don't identify as atheists themselves?
Yeah, I think one big part of this is just showing up. I talk a lot about sort of conspicuous solidarity. So we as atheists need to show up for people that are being targeted by this administration, that are being targeted because they're different.
Yeah.
Because we recognize that if they can target Muslims or Sikhs or Buddhists, they can target atheists. If they can target people from the countries that the sort of colorful term that Donald Trump had for certain countries, if they can target people coming from those places, they can certainly target atheists fleeing other places as well. If they can go after the Southern Poverty Law Center for disrupting these white supremacist groups, they can certainly go after us.
Yeah.
And so showing up in conspicuous solidarity is sort of job number one. Leading with the principles, right? That the First Amendment protects everyone. The principle that we all want what's best for our kids, that we all want to be able to live our lives free from interference, that we don't want to have to wonder whether the shopkeeper at the front desk of the general store, or whether the manager of the restaurant is going to treat us differently because of what we believe or don't believe, that we're going to get kicked out of our homes because our landlord finds out that we don't share their religious belief. Nobody wants that.
Right.
And we as atheists are protected the same way that those folks are. And recognizing, and this is where like the pluralism angle comes in, and where it's really crucial, recognizing that our society is much better off when we can have these discussions, these debates, and when there is difference, when there's people who share values but come at it from different ways and can have a conversation about it, and be protected from the government saying this is the one correct way to believe, this is how you have to order your life. Nobody wants that. And so I shouldn't say nobody. The Christian nationalists really
of course they do.
The rest of us very much don't. And so,
majority of people don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we have a regime that allows teachers and, you know, the again, vanishingly small minority of teachers like the Kennedy, Coach Kennedy guy, a system that allows those people to coercively pray and lead our kids in prayer and almost make their participation in sports contingent on whether they share the beliefs of their coach.
Right.
The same regime that allows that for an atheist kid allows it for somebody who's a Methodist instead of a Protestant, you know, evangelical, allows it to discriminate against a Catholic kid instead of a fundamentalist, you know, Southern Baptist, right? That's the how we have to show that from a legal perspective. But on the interpersonal side, I mean, that's a big part of it. Telling the stories. People aren't moved by statistics. They're moved
By
by
stories. Yeah.
stories and how we share how these experiences affect us, because they can see themselves reflected in that. And so demonstrating to people that this is all part of the same fight. This is all part of the same struggle. And that it's not Christians against atheists, religious against atheists. It's divisive, exclusionary, white Christian nationalism against pluralistic, democratic, small d democratic commitment to living together in a society. And that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that puts, I think, a really sharp point on it that resonates with people.
Awesome. Now, you've expressed frustration with journalists that give disproportionate coverage to religious voices, while atheist community work goes largely unreported. In fact, I personally experienced this. So I put in some opinion pieces, even like controversial, like I was criticizing public people or organizations, and I sent these to the Bristol Phoenix and got published. I tried to send them a piece about the Rhode Island Day of Reason at the State House. They completely ignored my submission. So,
Yep.
How do we break through that with these people, whether it's individuals or whether it's, you know, publication organizations that just want to ignore us away, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, so a big one here is that atheists for a long time, the existence of atheists has been treated as controversial, that like our mere existence is seen as an attack
Yeah.
on others. And I think we have to also be honest about the role that we played as a community in sort of reinforcing that, because it was that confrontation for a long time did lead to people actually covering us. And it was sort of the only way to get our foot in the door.
Yeah.
And so how do we do a better job of it? Well, number one is what you just talked about, leading with stories. And it's tough. And I don't want to pretend that it's just like, oh, we'll just say that you're, you know, it's not, oh, atheists show up to do X. It's local volunteers gather to do X. And, you know, you sort of sneak in, once you got your foot in the door, you can sort of sneak in, oh yeah, we're part of this atheist group.
Yeah,
and I mean, you sort of invert it. So instead of leading with atheists do X, it's community members and volunteers do X. And then once they're hooked or they're in, you sort of talk about it and talk about what brought you all together.
Right.
But the other one is just sort of keep flooding the zone. This is one of those areas where we don't need to look very far, and we don't need to go searching for other communities that have faced exactly the same stigma, exactly the same sort of level of groups ignoring us, that the gatekeepers of media ignoring us. And look at the tactics that worked for them. And so you look to the civil rights movement, you know, there was sort of a monopoly on publishing in the American South, where, you know, op-eds from civil rights leaders were not getting published because the people controlling the newspapers or the TVs, the radio stations were very committed to the system that those advocates were trying to tear down, right?
Right.
And so they weren't gonna give it up for free. And so thinking a little bit about, all right, what are some other avenues that we can do to get in here? And one of them is social media. One way of, I think it's like half of Americans, I think is the stat that I saw last week. Half of Americans get their news, at least in part, from social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, et cetera. And like that's this huge audience that the traditional gatekeepers don't have control over. Now, I wouldn't want to pretend that's perfect either, because you have algorithmic gatekeepers, you have, you know, the world's richest man controlling what used to be a pretty valuable way of getting around those traditional media gatekeepers. You have like the world's whatever richest man controlling two of the others, and you have another one of the world's richest men controlling the American version of TikTok, right? Like it's not perfect,
Yeah.
but it does get around some of the the local gatekeepers who, by the way, I sort of said that some of that gatekeeping is ideological, and that's definitely true. Some of it, though, is habitual, right? They're not necessarily excluding atheists simply because they don't like us. Part of it is there's no Pope of atheism. There's no Archbishop of Rhode Island
I'll
of
be the Pope
atheism.
of Atheists. I'm just kidding.
I mean, yeah, I don't even have a hat, man. It's terrible. I have no fancy hats. So,
Damn.
they don't know where to go. And so it's just like making ourselves more available, being willing to comment, showing up and keeping in their inbox. And it takes a lot of time, and it's not something that happens overnight. It takes us years sometimes to build strong relationships with journalists that cover this beat in particular, that cover like the religion angle,
Yeah.
for us to get the phone call. Because then they know, oh, this person is going to give me thoughtful, good, factual, accurate information that speaks to a topic or speaks to a perspective that is otherwise underrepresented. That just takes a ton of time, and there's no magic bullet there. But I think the fact is that religious framing, talking about how people are going to church every week and, oh, the church did this thing, that's viewed as like almost like a neutral, quote unquote, normal thing. People defer to the default of the default framing of, well, people go to church, 60% of Americans, and they're operating from this place where it used to be 80%, it used to be 90%, and so that was viewed as normal.
Yeah.
Whereas like atheists it was viewed as transgressive, and so they're trying to speak to universal experiences. And so if we can frame things in a way that gets to that universal experience, then it becomes less of a, oh, this is about like we're self-promoting or we're engaged in like ideological warfare here. We don't necessarily want that, and it depends on what your target is. But I think that's a big one, that it's not always from a place of like hostility. Often it's just, well, this is the easiest. I know who to call for the Catholic perspective. I call the local archbishop. I know who to call for the evangelical perspective. I call this megachurch pastor. Right? They don't know who to call for us. So just making ourselves more available.
Gotcha. Now, I did have one more question I was curious to ask you about. So, over the years, non-religious people in America, as a segment of the population, we've grown to around 28 to 32%, from what I saw. But that growth seems to have leveled off. Do you think there are ways that we could encourage more people to question religious institutions, become skeptics of religion, just like us?
Yeah, and I think one, I guess I don't want to say it's a good thing because it's profoundly horrible and it's having profoundly negative effects on our country, is the Christian nationalist movement is doing a great job of getting out of this place of like, oh, we're appealing to higher morals and things like that, and getting really down and dirty in politics. They're seen as hypocritical. They're seen as outcome driven. As they're not doing a great job
Right.
of keeping people in the pews, and their exclusion and their divisiveness is pushing people away. And so the thing that we can do isn't the just sort of like debating them. I mean, we should call them out. We do have to call them out. I think we are doing a good job of calling out their hypocrisy, and it gets those people that are sort of on the edge or skeptical, curious about what's going on. It pokes holes. It lays that it undermines some of the things that they have assumed for their entire life. The most important thing we can do is give people a landing spot, a place that is supportive, a place that meets their needs. And so what I was talking about regarding community, it's not exactly what programming you do that's going to pull people in. It's, hey, if you have a bad day, if the worst day of your life where you're something happens and you've got family in the hospital and you've got 2 kids, and what are you going to do right now? If that community is there with, I'm from the Midwest, there with a casserole and an offer of babysitting, like that's huge, right? That's the type of community that people want to belong to, more than anything having to do with, what book are they reading, what ideologically is happening, what events are they protesting, what are they showing up to? It's, do you have a place to go when everything goes south, right?
Yeah.
When things really get terrible. And that's hard, right? That takes a long time to build that level of trust with people. And so you have to engage in kind of conspicuous acts of demonstrating that is the type of community that you have, whether it's clearly laying out some, foundational elements of, codes of conduct. You know, if you engage in bad behavior, here's the process that's going to happen, right?
Yep.
That, you know, if you walk into a meeting, you're not worried about like getting harassed. I mean, again, another profound area of failure on the part of organized religion is they cover up these things. They
Yeah.
move pastors around
The
that are abusing people.
abusing children, you're right.
They, you know, I mean, there's examples where, you know, women get kicked out for coming to their religious leaders after if they found out their husband was, you know, cheating on them, or their husband was abusing them, and they turn it around and blame the woman, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, is there any confusion as to why, you know, young women in particular are less religious than young men? Well, part of it is because they've seen what happens when religious groups try to ban abortion or try to cover up, you know, abuse and
or treat them as secondary citizens.
Treat them as secondary citizens. And so, you know, standing up for our values, being unapologetic about our values, recognizing that, you know, yes, the dictionary definition of atheist is somebody who lacks belief in God, and that's it. But we have values. Part of being a community is that you have shared values, and, you know, you don't have to take a position on every single thing. And if there are disagreements, you can have different groups that emphasize different things. But boy, you know, hey, treat people with decency and humanity, and don't like not every element of everyone's existence is up for debate at every moment of the day. I wouldn't want to belong to a group where, you know, somebody like at every event, you know, is like, hey, debate me about, you know, trans people, or debate me about abortion, or debate me about that. Like, sometimes I want to just like clean a park, or I want to go hiking,
Yeah.
or I want to, you know, play board games, right? And so having clear expectations where people feel safe, supported, and you know, affirmed is a big part of it, and something that historically we've not done the best job of, because people are like, people look at that and go, well, that's, you know, that's not reason. That's, you know, that's all this touchy feely stuff. I don't know about that. And it's we just have to look toward how other communities have organized themselves, and the lessons that can be learned there. That's a big part of it. Is not, we don't necessarily have to do the best job, quote unquote, deconverting people. I think a lot of people are deconverting, are leaving, are
Yeah.
really turned off. And so what can we do to pull them in? And that has great effects for that person, for our community, for our nation as a whole, if those folks are supported and valued as members of our community, and feel that respect.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time. It's been a very interesting conversation. We're coming up on basically an hour here, so
Exactly.
I would love to
Perfect timing.
release you to whatever you want to do with your Sunday from now.
Yeah, church. I have to be at church.
Oh yeah, you have to be at church in a half
Yeah.
hour. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's not right. No, laundry. The thing that every atheist does on Sundays with
Yeah, it's laundry. Very
laundry and
important.
cleaning.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
All right. Well, it was great talking to you. Thanks so much. I'm glad we were able to do this.
yeah, thank you for joining us, and I wish you all the success and obviously continuing to head the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good
rest of
day.
your weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, lovely stuff. I was actually pulling up the task force thing. This is the, let me see here. This is the Trump task force to cry and play the victim for, to eradicate anti-Christian bias and restoring religious liberty, and by that he means trample on it for people who don't share his beliefs. I mean, the beliefs of his followers. Is he really a Christian? Does he have Christian beliefs? I'm not so sure about that, to be honest with you. But Biden administration's radical effort, they have a constant need to project. No, you're the radical. We're radical. No, you're the radical. It's so fucking boring, dude. They have a report. Oh my God, a report. The prosecution's policies for our corruption was actually because they don't like Christians. Oh no. Anything interesting in the Trump government's publication on here? Religious discrimination against Christians, you know, who are the majority of the population. You know, they're so discriminated against on a regular basis. Jesus Christ. Who eats this shit up? How dumb do you have to be to eat that shit up? I think we have to get to the report to get to anything interesting. This page isn't Johnson Amendment. What is the Johnson Amendment? Tell me all about it. Prohibiting nonprofits, including churches, from endorsing or opposing political candidates. Fucking civilian government employees aren't allowed to endorse or oppose political candidates. You telling me churches think they should be able to? Fuck you. I feel like... Do they not do this, though? I feel like they do this anyway. Am I fucking crazy? They've been trying to pressure it since 1954, but it's still law. But I almost feel like I've seen pastors of churches that are supposed to be charity organizations totally do this and not get punished for it. But maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe they should be more persecuted. Frankly, I don't think they're persecuted enough. It's not well enforced at all. Yeah, I get that impression. What the fuck? I mean, at the very least, I take some consolation in the fact that that's technically law, but I'm a little irritated that it's so not well enforced that I didn't even know it was the rule. That's a bit of a problem, I would say. Fines against Christian universities. They just say fines against Christian universities. They don't even say for what. What were you fined for? Were you fucking around? Is that possible? Girl sports. Conscience rights. Is that just right to believe what you want? You mean the thing that you don't care about, that you trample on a regular basis? Cute. Not the vaccine mandates. What year is it again? It's not 2022, right? Am I crazy? The exclusion of Christians from public programs, yes. That 68% of the population has just been so excluded from public programs. They're so persecuted, bro. Don't you get it? The way that government sites have been molested by this administration and propagandized, it's so disgusting. It's like North Korea. I mean, we're not there yet, but we're fucking getting there. They're always vague enough to where you can't dig into it to see how ridiculous it is until you get to, like, looking up specific stories yourself, because they wouldn't put it here, because then they would make themselves look like jackasses. What is this cuck weak ass framing? Aggressively oppose concerned parents? Oh no, not opposing parents! How could you? Where's the Garland School Board memo? Subhuman behavior. What is this? Attorney General Merrick Garland, 2021, directed the DOJ to address a rise in criminal conduct, harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school board. I can't. I'm gonna Fed post. I'm gonna go to jail. Whoever wrote this page, fucking whatever Trump said about those representatives and senators, that wasn't bad. That should happen to this person. Unbelievable. They're literally justifying violence and threats of violence for their side, or coming down on anything that happens on the other side. It is subhuman behavior. Not my gender. Boring. Oh, the page ended. I might as well read it. Not career employees supporting the trans people. Gotta get rid of those. I love how they just openly accuse others of doing exactly what they're doing. Not disgusting at all. Why would they suggest that Christians cannot be victims of religious discrimination? I mean, they can be, but what they're twisting and torturing here is not that people said they couldn't be victims of religious discrimination. It's that across the board, they're the majority, so they're not going to be the recipients of most of the religious discrimination. Other faith groups are going to be. Let's see, Civil Rights Division. Let's find the actual statement, because they definitely fucking twisted this around. Civil Rights Division, Christians cannot be victims of discrimination. What was the actual statement that this is based on, that they're not quoting from? Am I going to be able to find this? The Civil Rights Division. I love how Christians have an entire religion based on how they are persecuted all the time and how they're always the victim, while they make up the majority of the population and aggressively attack everyone who doesn't 100% agree with them. It's really cute setup that they have. Show me the documents, the discussions, documents, and decisions they are citing to. Link me, bro. I might not find it on the spot here. Oh, they referred to the Garland memo here. Oh, because you are opposing the Christian parent. Fuck you. It's so slimy and disgusting. And then they refer to the Bostock v. Clayton County redefining sex-based discrimination to include gender identity. That's just true. The Richmond Field Office memo that categorize radical traditionalist Catholics as potential domestic terrorism threats. I mean, they literally have been. I don't know if he was Catholic specifically. What about that guy that just straight up murdered some Democratic lawmakers and then no one fucking cared about it? Pro-life Christians blockading abortion clinics. Base Act prosecutions. Freedom to access to clinic entrances. Convicted of a felony conspiracy against rights. And the freedom to access to clinic. I mean, if there's a law... Listen, bro, if there is a law saying you shall not obstruct clinic entrances, and then you obstruct a clinic entrance because you think it's part of your campaign, your righteous crusade, and then you get prosecuted as a felony by the federal government, that's not you being persecuted, that's you being a dumbass. That's called the Darwin Award. Oh, but this is targeting Christian. Fuck you. If we did something like that, you would absolutely celebrate and dance around our graves when we get prosecuted. Don't even fucking pretend. Anything else? Any other weak ass things they use? Yeah, what fines against Liberty University? Isn't Liberty University Trump's fake university, or am I thinking? Is it called Trump University? I can't keep them. I can't keep all the grifters straight sometimes. Grand Canyon University fined for deceptive practices, failing to properly disclose the full cost of programs that often added 10K to 12K to the advertised price. Do you want, even if you support this institution, if you're a religious person, do you just want Grand Canyon University to steal money from other Christians like you? Why the fuck would you defend this? Are you, I can't say the word. Are you serious right now? Are you challenged? Liberty University, failure to comply with the Clery Act, accurate reporting of campus crime data, particularly sexual violence. So they were not reporting sexual violence. Do you want your other Christians to be raped at these universities and for there to be no consequences? What about the fines were too high? Also, they were just fines? Are people not in prison? What the fuck is going on? Bro, if you support Trump, for so long in my life, or the last decade, because it feels like a lifetime, I felt like, you know, if someone supports Trump, what the fuck, bro? I mean, I don't like it, but whatever. Maybe I can deal with you. And I'm getting to the point where it's like, if you continue to support this, there's something wrong with you, with your, if you call it a soul. Like, you were rotten to the core at that point. I don't know how I can even look at you straight. Or I'm not reading 505 pages of state propaganda, but oh no, not the transgender day of visibility. I'm such a persecuted Christian. How dare they persecute me by doing something positive for a community that has nothing to do with me. That makes me persecuted, guys. If I'm not the center of attention, that's persecuting me. Guys, hello. What's another random thing we can look at? What the fuck is this? Oh, the Plymouth. Oh, I remember Plymouth. What's going on here on this page? Local governments have sometimes violated the First Amendment in the name of protecting. I feel like local governments don't give a fucking shit about First Amendment sometimes. You can't criticize a politician at our town council meeting. You can't bring up their name. What the fuck does that mean? Are you sure? Are you telling me that wouldn't get fucking struck down if shit got real? I don't think local governments tend to give a fucking shit about First Amendment. They just care about getting their shit done and then moving as fast as possible through whatever. That's my feeling when I see how these things work. That's my semi-informed take on that. And they should, to be clear. Okay, so they should be like, nope, you can't do that. Someone should slap them around, but it'd be too much work to do it for everywhere. So it kind of just slides under. You know what I'm saying? Boring. Anything else? The Biden administration asserted government interest in anti-discrimination. It believes superseded the freedom of Christians to act in accordance with their beliefs. Guys, if you push anti-discrimination, we can't freely practice our beliefs. Well, if you're practicing your beliefs leads to discriminating against everyone else. Maybe you shouldn't be able to do that. You know, maybe you're not the only people who live here, dog. I don't know if that ever occurred to you. You seem to forget it all the time. You think the world fucking revolves around you. Okay. What's this? More state propaganda. I love how the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is also being, like, roped in. Disgusting. This is from the Free Thought Caucus, so obviously it's slanted towards me. Task force review all the departments and agencies for anti-Christian bias. Submit one report after 20 days. I already did that. I started looking up pages related to this. The order accuses the prior administration of engaging in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians. Not the peaceful Christians! As opposed... Wait, wasn't there shit related? They were complaining you find a university for not reporting sexual violence? I'm sorry, was that sexual violence perpetrated by peaceful Christians? Wow, your definition of peaceful is a little interesting, bro. While ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses such as ... blanks blank line. This task force aims to weaponize a distorted version of religious freedom as a license to justify bigotry and discriminate, which is literally what they did. Like, excuse me, your anti-discrimination laws are actually keeping us from practicing the way we want to practice? Well, it kind of sounds like you just want to discriminate against people, bro. God wants me to throw mud on this F slur, guys. God wants me to tell all the gay people they're not allowed to have a job at my company. God told me to, bro. Why are you persecuting me? Why are you coming in and telling me how to run my shit? How dare you? Yeah, and if Trump really cared about defending religious freedom and ending religious persecution, he would address anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of anti-religious bigotry that affect so many Americans. They'd probably use his stance on Israel Palestine and be like, "Oh, see, he's not anti-Semitic. He supports Israel." That would probably be their line for that one. Islamophobia, obviously, he hates Muslims. Yeah, he would just own that one. Yeah, pretty disgusting. Interfaith Alliance. I'm interested in. I feel like this is going to be one of those hippie religious organizations that side with me, basically. I don't know anything about this organization. That's just my assumption from like my knowledge of Interfaith Alliance people. Or not Interfaith Alliance specifically, but like interfaith like organizations tend to be like towards my end, as ironic as that can be sometimes. It's not believable, is it? But it's wait. Oh, this is all Trump's quote. There is no evidence of widespread anti-Christian bias in the United States. The majority of Americans are Christians, and hate crimes experts have no documented widespread incidents of Americans facing discrimination because of their Christian faith. This is in contrast to anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which are persistent threats. What the Trump admin means by anti-Christian bias is actually LGBTQ non-discrimination. Vaccine requirements. Oh no! What the fuck does being a Christian have to do with fucking vaccines? I think you have to have less than 80 brain cells in your skull to eat this shit up. That's my take. Our lovely Freedom from Religion Foundation. We don't need a task force to root out anti-Christian bias, but one that will finally go after those who flagrantly violate the constitutional separation between religion and government. True! James Madison rolling in his grave. Jefferson rolling in his grave. The goal is not only to aid faith-based groups in obtaining government grants, but also to influence politics in a broad range of social areas. This is a clear signal that the White House appears to favor funding faith-based programs related to adoption and foster care, and that faith-based programs that discriminate, such as LGBTQ clients, will be able to receive government grants. Such as against LGBTQ clients, excuse me. Did I say that right the first time? I feel like I misread that. I didn't read it completely right. And then American Atheists. Publication claimed, I cannot talk today. The publication claims that Biden's policies regularly clashed with the Christian worldview, setting abortion, gender identity, and sexual orientation, it depends what kind of Christian you are, as areas of conflict and framing civil rights protections as violations of religious liberty. But the report relies heavily on Christian nationalist groups like the Heritage Foundation, American Principles Project, don't know who they are, and the First Liberty Institute, also don't know who they are. Mentions atheists only twice in footnotes, effectively excluding the 29% of Americans who identify as religiously unaffiliated. And if they did mention us, they'd be to attack us, I bet. It also overlooks the widespread stigmatization and discrimination faced by atheists under every presidential administration. as documented by American Atheists groundbreaking U.S. secular survey. I mean, I might look at that. Nick Fish. Oh, we know this guy. It's Nick Fish. True religious freedom, the kind our nation's founders enshrined in the Constitution, protects and treats equally people of all faiths and of none. It's very clear this administration is only concerned about Americans of a certain faith. The current administration is increasingly invoking anti-Christian bias as a way to reinforce the false narrative that the United States is a Christian nation, which it was not. To reframe civil rights protections for LGBTQ plus Americans as discriminatory, and to recast any disagreement with the right Christian nationalist worldview as improper or even criminal. Cool story. Oh yeah, we're good on that. All right. Not good stuff. Not good stuff happening. Go to RhodeIslandAtheist.com. I think it's it's riatheist.com. I don't want to tell you to type in. I don't want to say that and you type in the full word Rhode Island. It's riatheist.com. All one word. Go to the Day of Reason at the State House of Providence. Go to the Spring Party. Go to all your school committee meetings and town councils all the time. And be active participants in your community like good stewards and citizens, and fight back against the dumbasses who currently run things, who suck ass. Goodbye. Who am I gonna raid? Who am I gonna raid on the Twitch side? Do I even remember how to raid? Oh, it's this button. I haven't watched Twitch in a while. Do I even have... Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green. Mary, avert your eyes. It's spoilers. Their avatar is a hamster and a Pokemon onesie. Did I do it right?
Okay.
Did I do it?
Why every time I did this
I already raided?
the other day off stream and
Did I do it?
oh hey.
I did it.
Thank you for the raid. How was your stream today? Welcome, welcome. We're playing some Pokemon Fire Red and we've just entered the Rocket Hideout. But yeah, no, sorry, I was saying I did this area off stream recently in Leaf Green. And for some reason I walked in here and I expected there to be